This is a small pouch, and inside we have the Fuji x100v, an excellent portable all-around camera with a viewfinder that's amazing to use, and also live view features. So many people don't understand how small this really is. To compare, here is a small screwdriver next to it, and you can see that it's smaller than the screwdriver in length. See, it's almost half an inch smaller, so that's pretty small. So, and let's take a look at another comparison of size. Here is my phone, the Galaxy Note 9, and is smaller than the Galaxy Note 9 in length by, let's say, a quarter of an inch. To compare, here is my 5D Classic with the 100mm f2.8L lens macro, and this beast weighs together with the lens about 3 kilograms, which is somewhat heavy if you're gonna be carrying it all day long. But this is also an excellent camera. But check this out, check the Fuji x100 out, and look, it's the size of the lens. It's just the size of the lens and weighs so much less. So which one do you reckon you're gonna get more tired if you're like having to carrying it all day? I mean, sometimes see that pouch in the beginning, I have it in that thing all day long and I don't get tired at all. I even forget I have camera with me. This is another Fuji camera, the Fuji X-T20 with 35mm 7/30 f1.2 lens, and this is one of the smallest lens you can get, manual focus lens you can get for the Fuji, and comparatively it's smaller in width than the Fuji X20 with this lens. Lengthwise it's about the same. As you can see, Fuji basically has found a sweet spot in the length department, and the length is perfect. You can hold it with one of your hands and it doesn't feel too small or too big. But the problem is that the Fuji X-T20 has a small hand grip on it, but the X100 doesn't have anything like it. See, on the X-T20 you also have this thumb rest bit, but on the Fuji X100v is just a bit of a notch or a slight increase in height to get your hand to hold it well. But it doesn't really bother me because it's lightweight. Both cameras have the tilt screen features. It only tilts in one direction, of course, it doesn't tilt sideways, and that's perfectly fine for me because getting the slow angle shots really helps with that. Both has touch screen, and you can see that the Fuji X100v's screen is slightly better, but you don't really notice it until you actually use both of them. But this is the Fuji X-T20 with the 35mm lens, and look how wide it is. It's f1.2. On a full frame this would be equivalent to a f1.8, I believe. And look at this, the difference in the aperture and the lens size and how much light it will get in. So obviously the Fuji X100v will take much less light than the Fuji X-T20 with this lens, mostly because it's a physical issue. But nonetheless, it's one of the best lenses in the world. Now you can see, let me try to show you how versatile it is. And see, it fits in the jeans pocket perfectly fine, and it's so small that you can carry it in your pocket. If you don't have a phone or anything in that pocket, it takes the whole space of the pocket, but still you can walk around with it. One of the best features of this camera is the optical and electronic viewfinder. Here is a somewhat obscured view of it, but you can see on the right hand bottom corner there is a small digital display that you can pop up when needed to confirm focus, and you can see it showing the middle of the screen. it's a cool feature where you can have the electronic viewfinder showing you what the picture and how it will look, check focus, and you can also switch to different kinds of frame, and you can see a bit of the frame that is extra, and which helps in taking a better composition. And you can also switch to the digital viewfinder, and it's amazingly bright and doesn't feel laggy at all. It's perfectly fine. Now let's take a deeper look into this camera. So this is the exposure dial. Clicks are very hard, but over time they will get softer because of usage. This camera is very new. I have it like for a year, but I have just barely taken it about like 30 or 40 times at most, so everything is a bit stiff. You can see how beautifully built it is. You can see the patterns. The top and the bottom plates are made from aluminum. In this version of the camera, which is the x100v, the older versions used magnesium, and it feels very nice in the hand. It's a bit slippery if you're not holding it tight, and but it feels real nice. It's machined aluminum. It looks great. The Fuji x100v engraving is beautiful, and there is a hot shoe. You can attach your flash to it. I sometimes do, but it gets a bit top heavy if you do that. But it has a built-in flash as well. The screen is beautiful. It's built amazingly. It's very minimalistic in its design if you look at it carefully. And let's take a look at the battery. The battery is a 1260 mAh battery, which is the same battery as the Fuji X-T20, the NP126S, which is fine for about 300 shots, but in the real world attributes I have seen that sometimes when you use the live view and you have the camera with you, I just wanted a bit more battery life. I mean, of course that can be solved by carrying another battery, but the whole idea of this camera is the portability, right? So this here is a small memory card I had laying around that I just put in it, and it works perfectly fine. It's 95 megabyte per second, but I recommend 100 megabyte per second cards, which will work fine with this camera and 4K recording. All the functions and all the buttons on this camera is highly customizable. The flash is on the front. On the Fuji X-A1 and X-E1, you can use the flash to bounce it off the ceiling because they have a spring mechanism it has built in, but this has only the front flash, so you cannot move it. But you can use it as a fill flash due to its slow sync shutter speeds, which is fine. Now, it took me a while, about a year, to understand what this camera actually is, because I have been using full frame cameras and other cameras from Fuji as well, but it took a while to understand this camera. Imagine having the best sensor you can make and pair it with the best lens you can make, and you have this camera. This is the best APS-C sensor camera that is tuned exactly to this lens, because the developers only has to think about only this sensor and only this lens. Both are well tested and all the problems has been taken out and the form factor reduced. When you have like other cameras with interchangeable lens, the sensor and the company and the third-party lenses, brands and everything, they have to think about all that when they design other cameras. With this though, it's not cheap. This camera isn't cheap, and this is one of the main reasons, because there is a large team working just on this camera and on improving this lens. This lens has a conventional and an aspherical element, which is an upgrade from the older X100 lenses. This is an upgraded lens with less aberration and less distortion. I don't see any problems with this lens. This lens is very sharp, and it creates creamy bokeh. Although it's just f2, but still it's a lot. It's very usable. Now this camera is very light, so I used a small strap from a point and shoot camera that I use with this Fuji X100v, and it works perfectly fine. One of the more interesting features of this camera is the full HD slow motion recording in different formats, and it's really amazing to see this feature in such a form factor. It's really smooth even at night, which is very hard to do, and this camera achieves it flawlessly. So that's hats off to this camera's design. The menu system, on the other hand, is a completely different story. It's fine on other Fuji cameras. I don't know why, but Fuji is really bad with this camera on menus. But luckily, you can assign all the functions you need to buttons using this feature. Okay, so let's come to the final conclusion. Is this camera for you? You wanna shoot in the rain? This is the camera for you. You wanna have a great portable camera with you at all times? This is the camera for you. You want to start with your photography journey, and you wanna have one of the best hardwares available? This is the camera. What can I say? I mean, I've been using full frame cameras for such a long time, but this camera really opened my eyes.